There are 10,000 ways to die in the 41st millennium, but only one way to truly live, in service to the Emperor of mankind. On the shrine world of Veyra, that truth was carved into stone, sung in hymns, and etched into the very marrow of its people. Pilgrims by the millions crossed its plains to kneel at gilded cathedrals. Its spires clawed into the heavens, each topped with burning braziers that never dimmed. From orbit, Veyra was a jewel, shimmering oceans of light framed by endless stained glass cities, a beacon of unyielding faith. But in the Imperium, beauty often hides rot, and the rot is what drew the Inquisition. This tale is told from the third person, for we will not follow only one soul, but many. A governor, desperate to shield his honor, priests clinging to their rituals, soldiers with lasguns at the ready, and above all, an inquisitor who has come to weigh an entire world upon his scales of judgment. Still with us, listener? If you crave more tales from the dark millennium, lend your strength. Subscribe, like, share, so that the Emperor's light may reach further, even into the darkest corners of the void. Now, let us step onto Veyra itself. The day the Inquisition came began as most did, with hymns echoing through streets paved in marble dust, and with the governor's voice droning across the voxcasters, declaring his people's devotion unbreakable. Beneath the soaring spires, pilgrims knelt, pressing foreheads into cracked stone, weeping with joy to feel holy ground beneath their skin. The Adeptus Sororitas patrolled the plazas, bolters slung, their eyes hard as iron. Then the sky split. The inquisitorial cruiser Penance of Dawn descended from orbit, a black dagger against the sun, its hull scored with 1,000 battles. Every shrine bell tolled, not in celebration, but in warning. Few had ever seen an Inquisitor's ship come unbidden, and those who had never forgot the aftermath. Governor Helios Veit stood upon his palace balcony, sweat dripping beneath his robes of office, though the air was cool. He muttered prayers as a lander screamed down toward the central plaza. The Sororitas formed ranks, helms snapping shut, and the ecclesiastical choirs fell silent mid-verse. The ramp hissed open. A single figure emerged, robed in black, his chest plate engraved with the rosette of the Inquisition. His face was lined, his eyes pale steel, and around him walked the trappings of terror. Stormtroopers in matte carapace armor, their hellguns gleaming with power, and a servo skull that bobbed and whirred as though sniffing for lies. Inquisitor Malachar, the head canoness whispered, her gauntleted hand tightening around her bolter's grip. Malachar's voice cut through the plaza like a blade. By the Emperor's will and the Inquisition's mandate, I claim right of judgment over this world. There are whispers of corruption within the Veyra's faithful. I will see the truth. Gasps rippled across the crowd. Pilgrims clutched icons. Some began to chant in defiance, others in fear. The governor stepped forward, bowing, his voice trembling. My Lord Inquisitor, Veyra is pure, our faith unshakable. You will find nothing here but devotion. Malachar raised a single hand, silencing him. His eyes scanned the cathedral spire above, its stained glass glimmering red blood in the dawn. Faith is not immunity. Too many worlds have burned while governors swore the same. I will decide." The investigation began with precision. Vox units were seized, records copied, archives pried open by servitors. The Arbitites found their authority overruled, their precinct doors locked by stormtroopers. At first, the people welcomed it, sure the Inquisitor's hunt would only vindicate them. Priests blessed the agents as they searched through reliquaries. Pilgrims offered testimony, recounting how pious the clergy were, how fervently the governor tithed to Terra. But whispers grew. An auspex sweep of the underhives revealed entire districts unaccounted for. A patrol of Sororitas vanished into the catacombs beneath the Grand Cathedral, their last Vox transmission a single scream. Workers whispered of statues weeping black ichor at night, and the more Malachar pressed, the more resistance he met, not only from the shadows, but from those in the open. Governor Veit stalled records, citing bureaucratic tangle. Priests shut doors in the Inquisition's face, calling Malachar a blasphemer for daring to question their purity. The people grew restless, forming chanting mobs outside the governor's palace, demanding the Inquisitor leave. Yet Malachar pressed deeper. He walked the underhive himself, stormtroopers fanning out, his auspex hissing with interference. He touched the stones where pilgrims had vanished. He studied hymns etched into cathedral walls, tracing script that bent subtly, sickly, into patterns no human hand should ever have carved. When he emerged, his face was grimmer than iron. "Rot festers beneath gold," he muttered to his retinue. "This shrine world is not as it claims." And though the bells still rang and pilgrims still prayed, the shadow of judgment now loomed. The shrine world of Veyra had endured countless pilgrimages, but never scrutiny like this. The Inquisition's presence spread like a toxin in water, unseen but felt everywhere. Inquisitor Malachar's retinue descended upon the planet with methodical ruthlessness. Data vaults cracked open, officials dragged from offices, servitors humming as they catalogued every whispered heresy and anomaly. At first, the ecclesiarchy cooperated, at least on the surface. Choir masters opened their hymnals, abbots allowed access to sanctified vaults, and the canoness of the Order of the Sacred Martyr assigned sisters to escort the Inquisitor's agents. But beneath every word of compliance was a simmering resentment. Who was Malachar to question centuries of devotion carved into marble and sung in blood? Malachar knew better than to trust the gilded facades. He had seen too many shrine worlds turn rotten, too many faithful masks hiding chaos cults or Xenos corruption. His eyes were sharp, his instincts sharper, honed by decades of rooting out heresy. As he moved through the marble plazas, stormtroopers flanking him, he noticed details others would overlook. The way pilgrims avoided one particular fountain, the faint static when voxlings neared the cathedral's eastern transept, the strange reluctance of priests to mention the underhive at all. "Truth resists the light," he muttered to his acolyte, a thin woman named Sierra with a data slate always in hand. "Press harder." The governor, Helicost Veit, meanwhile, was unraveling. From his palace balcony he watched crowds gathering below, not in celebration, but in protest. They chanted hymns louder and louder, some in defiance of the Inquisition, others in desperate pleas for the Emperor's protection. Each day he issued proclamations, his voice ragged from strain. We are faithful. Veyra is pure. But the proclamations no longer calmed the people. Behind closed doors, Veyra argued with Malachar. My Lord Inquisitor, these methods breed unrest. You seek rot where there is none, and the people suffer for it. I beg you, temper your hand. Malachar regarded him coolly, servoskull whirring above his shoulder. The Emperor does not beg. He judges. If your people suffer under investigation, perhaps it is guilt that gnaws them. The governor flinched as if struck. We are loyal. Malachar leaned closer, voice low and sharp. Loyalty that must be shouted is loyalty already in doubt. Evidence mounted. The Arbite's precinct archives revealed missing records of pilgrim shipments, entire convoys unaccounted for. Sira unearthed sermons altered subtly over decades, words bent toward strange cadences, almost like coded chants. One night, stormtroopers dragged a ragged pilgrim from the alleys, his hands tattooed with runes that glowed faintly in the dark. Under interrogation, he babbled about the true God beneath the altar. When Malachar ordered the Grand Cathedral searched, the resistance sharpened. The canoness herself barred the gates, her sisters armored and bolters armed. Inquisitor, she declared, voice like ringing steel, you question the Emperor's house. This cathedral has stood untainted for 1,000 years. You will not desecrate it. Stormtroopers raised hellguns, tension crackling like charged wire. The faithful watching in the plaza gasped, torn between terror and fury. For a heartbeat, the world teetered on the edge of bloodshed. Malachar did not flinch. His voice cut through the air, quiet but unyielding. If this house is the Emperor's, it will withstand my scrutiny. If it cannot, then it never was his to begin with. The canoness hesitated. Duty warred with suspicion, with pride, with fear. Finally, she lowered her weapon a fraction. Very well, but I go with you. The doors groaned open. The Inquisition entered the cathedral. Inside, incense choked the air. Sunlight fractured through stained glass, painting saints on the marble floor. Pilgrims knelt in prayer, whispering, unaware of the storm about to break over them. As Malachar's Auspex scanners swept the structure, the machine spat static. Icons rattled in their alcoves, as though the walls themselves protested the intrusion. The canoness walked stiffly beside him, jaw clenched, eyes wary. It was Sira who first noticed the script. She paused at a side altar, frowning at the lettering etched into its base. This is not High Gothic. This is scripture, the canoness snapped. No, Sira whispered, tracing a curve with trembling fingers. This is an inversion. Holy words rewritten, twisted. Do you see? The Emperor's name, reversed, like a mirror. Malachar stepped forward, eyes narrowing. He could feel it now. The faint hum of something wrong, something beneath the marble, pulsing in rhythm like a heart. Rot festers beneath gold, he muttered again. The canoness's face went pale. Outside, in the plaza, word spread like wildfire. The Inquisition had defiled the cathedral. Some faithful wailed in despair, others shouted for blood. The mob grew restless, pressing against Sororitas lines, demanding Malachar's death. The Inquisition had drawn the line. The storm was only beginning. Still with us in the darkness? Hit that like button if this tale chills your soul.
The cathedral swallowed sound like a tomb. Torches guttered in the vast nave, shadows crawling along statues of saints that seemed to watch with eyes too knowing. Malachar's auspex screeched in protest, readings spiking and vanishing as if the machine were afraid. The canoness marched stiffly at his side, her sisters fanning out, bolters tight in their grips. But even they felt the unease, the way the floor seemed to pulse underfoot, the way the hymns of pilgrims beyond the doors grew fainter, replaced by whispers that had no source. Sira, bent over her data slate, paled. "Inquisitor, there's a passage beneath the altar. Records say it was sealed 3 centuries ago." Malachar's lips thinned. Seals fail when faith is weak. "Open it." The altar split under servo tools, revealing a stairwell descending into black. The smell that rose was wrong. Copper and incense twisted together, sweet and rancid at once. One Sororitas gagged behind her vox grill. They descended. The catacombs stretched in endless arches, carved not in stone, but in fused bone. Candles guttered in alcoves, wax pooling like flesh. At first they found nothing but dust and silence. Then the silence broke. A scream echoed, high, sharp, abruptly cut off. The squad raced toward it, bolters and hellguns ready. What they found was worse than death. A sister pinned to a wall, alive, but her veins bulged with black fire. She convulsed, eyes rolling white, lips mouthing prayers that melted into guttural chants not her own. "Mercy," she croaked. The canoness hesitated, but Malachar did not. A bolt round ended her torment. The echo thundered through the catacombs like judgment. They pressed on, tension ratcheting with every step. Symbols crawled across the walls, shifting when looked at too long. Pilgrims' bones lay in heaps, skulls carved with mirrored scripture. Then came movement. Shadows slithering across the arches, resolving into hooded figures. Cultists. Their chanting rose, a warped hymn that turned scripture inside out. Bolters roared, hellguns spat red fire. Marble dust filled the air with the stink of ozone and blood. The cultists fought with fanatical strength, blades slick with toxins, but the Inquisition soldiers were professionals. Precision shots tore them apart, sisters advancing in perfect formation. Yet, for every heretic slain, 2 more seemed to step from the dark. Amid the chaos, Malachar saw it. A sealed door of black stone, pulsing faintly. Symbols writhed upon it like worms. The cultists weren't defending themselves. They were defending that. He pointed his rosette toward it, voice a steel command. "Break the seal." The canoness turned to him, her face ashen. "You know not what lies beneath." "I know it festers," Malachar shot back, "and festering must be cut out." The stormtroopers moved. Melta charges were placed. The cultists screamed louder, throwing themselves suicidally into the Inquisition's line. The canoness shouted prayers, torn between obedience and dread. The charges blew. The door cracked open, and a blast of air howled out, carrying whispers that clawed at the mind. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to tilt. The faithful above screamed in unison, as if they too felt the rupture. From the blackness beyond, something stirred.
The seal ruptured, and the cathedral itself seemed to groan in agony. From the black chamber below poured a sound not meant for mortal ears. Half hymn, half shriek,
a chorus of blasphemy that made Vox units howl and servo skulls crash to the ground. Even hardened stormtroopers flinched as their visors filled with static, their teeth rattling in their skulls. From the fissure came shapes. Not daemons, not yet, but the raw suggestion of them. Shadows with claws longer than arms, eyes burning where no heads should be, 1,000 forms collapsing into one. It was a presence that could not fully breach reality without help. The cultists provided that help, cutting their own throats, bleeding rivers of sacrifice that streamed toward the chamber like molten silver. Malachar's voice rang over the madness, steady as iron. Purge them. Seal this abomination in fire. The canoness raised her bolter, face carved from stone. Her sisters unleashed a storm of blessed bolts, detonations shredding cultists and blasting chunks from the bone walls. Stormtroopers advanced with precision, hellguns turning heretics into ash. Yet still the tide surged. Above ground, chaos spread like wildfire. Word of the battle in the cathedral catacombs broke across the Vox, twisting with every retelling. To some, the Inquisition was slaying innocents. To others, they were fighting demons. A mob surged against the palace gates, banners of the ecclesiarchy held high. Arbitites fired suppression rounds, but the crowd did not disperse. They pressed harder, screaming for the Emperor's judgment upon Malachar. Governor Veit cowered in his chambers, advisors shouting over one another. "We must denounce him," cried one. "If we side with the Inquisition, the people will hang us," shouted another. The governor could only tremble, muttering, we are loyal," as if the words might shield him. In the catacombs, the climax erupted. The black chamber burst open. From it poured tendrils of warp light, grasping, burning, reshaping. A sister was snatched mid-prayer, dragged into the dark, her scream cut short. The canoness bellowed the litany of faith, charging forward, her power sword igniting in holy light. She carved through cultists like wheat, her blade humming as it clashed against shadows, not entirely flesh. Malachar himself advanced, drawing a weapon few had seen before, an archaic plasma pistol, its casing etched with wards, its barrel glowing like a miniature sun. With every shot, warp shapes screeched and recoiled. Sira shouted over the din, holding her data slate aloft. "The corruption threads into the foundations. It's feeding on the cathedral itself. If we don't stop it, the entire city, maybe the entire world, will drown in the warp." Malachar did not hesitate. He slammed his rosette into his vox bead. "This is Inquisitor Malachar. Authorization Omega Purge. Initiate planetary cleansing. Burn it all." The words echoed like a death knell. Above, the penance of dawn stirred. Torpedo tubes unlocked, cyclonic warheads primed. On the surface, Arbitites and Sororitas alike received the purge order. Confusion turned to horror, horror to resignation. Across the plazas, holy fire was ready to fall not only on heretics, but on faithful, pilgrims, priests, everyone. The canoness faltered mid-swing, her blade dripping ichor. "You damn us all," she whispered. Malachar's reply was as cold as void steel. "Better damned in fire than damned in eternity."
The melta charges planted earlier detonated again, collapsing catacomb arches, entombing cultists and sisters alike. Those who lived pressed upward into the cathedral nave where pilgrims had gathered in their thousands. They screamed as flames began to lick across the city outside, Arbitites and stormtroopers setting fire to homes, statues, reliquaries. The purge had begun. Still here, clinging to the light in this storm of darkness? Subscribe now. More tales of grim judgment await you.
The purge spread like wildfire. From orbit, cyclonic torpedoes screamed toward Veyra's surface, detonations blooming into suns that consumed districts in a heartbeat. Cities once alive with hymns dissolved into seas of molten glass. The very air became flame, smoke pillars clawing toward the heavens as if the planet itself were offering sacrifice. On the ground, it was worse. Arbites fired into mobs as citizens fought to defend their holy sites. Sororitas turned their bolters on their own congregations, each pull of the trigger a wound carved into their souls. Priests clutched relics to their chests as firestorms swallowed them whole. The faithful wailed prayers that turned to screams, their voices rising with the roar of the inferno. Malachar strode through the cathedral nave as it collapsed in flames, his rosette glowing with authority no mortal could challenge. Around him, stormtroopers fought in silence, faces grim, each step forward marking another 1,000 souls condemned. The canoness fought beside him until her strength failed, her power sword guttering out as she fell beneath rubble. Governor Veyra was dragged from his palace, begging, proclaiming his loyalty to the last breath. Malachar gave him none. A single shot ended his words forever. By nightfall, Veyra was no longer a shrine world. It was a pyre. But the purge did not end in fire alone. Survivors emerged from ruins, some scarred, some broken, many silently staring at the blackened sky. They had sung, prayed, and lived in faith their whole lives, yet the Inquisition had marked them unworthy. Some wept, unable to reconcile love of the Emperor with the judgment passed upon them. Others hardened, their devotion curdling into bitter fanaticism. Seeds of future heresies were sown that night, even as heresy was burned away. Malachar strode amid the ashes, cloak torn, plasma pistol scorched, eyes hard. He felt no triumph, only necessity. His duty was not to comfort, not to spare, but to preserve mankind by any means. To him, Veyra was just one more world weighed and found wanting. He whispered into the vox, his words carried to the fleet above. The Emperor's light burns eternal. Veyra burns in its reflection. The flames answered, and silence followed.
The story of Veyra was not unique. In the endless sprawl of the Imperium, 1,000,000 worlds prayed to the same emperor, sang the same hymns, built the same shrines. And on 1,000,000 worlds, doubt and rot waited, festering just beneath the surface. The Inquisition existed for this reason, to tear away the mask of piety and reveal what lay beneath. Sometimes, as on Veyra, it found nothing but fear, lies, and corruption woven so tightly into faith that there was no hope of separation. For such places, mercy was fire. But fire does not discriminate. In the flames, cultist and pilgrim, heretic and loyalist, priest and child all burned the same. The price of survival in the 41st millennium is cruelty. The Emperor demands nothing less. Veyra's name was struck from the records. Officially, it had never existed. Yet, whispers lingered among pilgrims who escaped off-world, stories carried in hushed tones. Some said the Inquisition had killed the faithful unjustly. Others said it had saved mankind from something darker, something unspeakable beneath the cathedral. Both versions carried their own terror.